Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Real Estate No Dumb Questions. Today, I wanted to answer a ton of questions that have recently come in. And to be honest, these are questions that I get all the time, weekly, if not daily. So let's get into it. First question being, what is a title search? A title search is an examination of public records to determine who the owner of the property is and what claims are potentially tied to that property, such as a mortgage lien. Probably the potential or the current owner on that property has a mortgage that they took out in order to purchase the property, and that mortgage is a lien attached to the home, meaning the home is being used as the collateral if that mortgage lien were to go unpaid. What are easements, and how do they affect the ownership of your property? So an easement grants you the legal right to access your property by use of another means. So for example, let's say your home sits in a cul-de-sac with maybe 4 or 5 other neighbors, and there's only one road that you can access in order to even get to your property. That would be an example of a driveway or a road easement. Some very common easements that you'll also see are utility easements, such as a phone line. There's a phone line running under the property or over it. That would likely be a utility easement that shows up on the title work. What is a home inspection? A home inspection is a visual assessment by a licensed contractor for a property that you are planning to purchase. What this licensed contractor is looking for are potential safety hazards that could be going on in the property, and they are inspecting the physical condition of the property as well. What does being under contract mean? Okay, so being under contract, let's say you're the buyer. When you're under contract, this means that you put an offer in front of the seller and the seller accepted your offer. You are now under contract with an official legal agreement that says you are going to buy their property. Just because you're under contract, this does not mean that all is said and done. This just means that the terms for this particular purchase have been agreed upon by the seller and the buyer, and that all contingencies, a part of the contract, must be met in order for you to close on the home. What is a contingency? A contingency is a condition that must be met in order for a property to be sold. There are several different types of contingencies. There is the appraisal contingency, the financing contingency, the home inspection contingency, and a home sale contingency. Contingencies are meant to protect all parties on the transaction. This means the buyer and the seller. It's meant to protect both of them from various things that can happen or go wrong during a transaction. What is the difference between a selling agent and a listing agent? Great question, and this might even be a little bit confusing, but bear with me. The selling agent is the buyer's agent. The listing agent is the seller's agent. So when you have a seller who's listing their property for sale and they're working with an agent to represent their interests as the seller, the agent that has listed their property for sale, that is the listing agent. Whereas the buyer's agent, again called the selling agent, they are there to represent the interests of the buyer, to sell them on a home that they want to purchase under terms that they are comfortable with. What is a home sale contingency? Great question. So in the scenario that you are already a homeowner who wants to buy another property, their next property, maybe you're trying to upgrade from a condo into a single family home, but you need to sell your condo in order to purchase the single family home. In that case, you could put in a home sale contingency written into your contract for the home you want to purchase, which would protect you from anything that could happen that would prevent you from being able to sell your home. So this just means that if something goes wrong while you're trying to sell one property, you could potentially back out of the contract on the property you're trying to purchase because you weren't able to sell your current home. So how long does it take to actually close on a home? So after you have done your house hunting and you've picked the home with your realtor and you're officially under contract, then typically this next part is going to vary depending on you as the buyer and your specific circumstances, and depending on the jurisdiction that you're located in. But generally speaking, if we're talking about a standard residential property, again, generally speaking, and depending on your circumstances, once you're officially under contract, you will be able to close on your home usually within 30 to 45 days, maybe 60 if it's a more complex deal, but generally you should expect to be able to close on the home within 30 to 45 days. So what is an appraisal? An appraisal is an inspection and a report completed by a licensed professional who is trained to evaluate the value of the home. An appraisal will typically happen when you, as a buyer, are working with a lender because the lender wants to ensure that the asset, meaning the home, that is being used as the collateral for the loan is actually worth the money being lent to you as the buyer. An appraisal is also good for a buyer to have because it's going to show them whether or not they're paying a fair price for the home that they're purchasing. An appraiser is usually looking at the physical condition of the property, the outside, sometimes the inside as well, and particularly making note of anything that might not be working well within the property. For example, maybe the stairs don't have a railing, and the appraiser might note that on the report as a safety hazard. The appraiser is also looking at comparable properties in nearby neighborhoods and pricing them to compare to the property that is being purchased. Okay, what is a deed? So the deed is the title to your home, and the deed confirms who owns the property, who owned it prior to you, so who transferred it to you, who was your seller. It shows the date of that transfer. It includes how you took title. So if you were married or unmarried, did you go on title in a certain tenancy, such as joint tenants or tenants by the entirety? And it will also include the legal description of the property that is reviewed by the attorneys. The deed will go on public record within your jurisdiction, so it's also something that you're able or should be able to pull from court records. What does escrow mean? From a title perspective, escrow means that the title company is authorized as an approved party to hold all the funds related to your real estate transaction until that transaction is closed. Once the transaction is closed and you are now the owner of the home you just purchased, all the funds will be released from that escrow account to the appropriate parties. For example, the seller just sold their home to you, and in an ideal world, that seller would have made a net profit and get some proceeds out of it. So those funds would be released out of the title company's escrow account and sent to the seller. Another example of funds being dispersed from the escrow account after the transaction is officially closed would be the agent compensation. If there were agents involved, a listing agent, a selling agent, then their compensation would also be paid out of escrow. What is a title defect? So whether you are buying or selling a home, a title defect can look like one of various things. A title defect is a discrepancy or an error that can make it difficult to transfer the property from person A to person B. A defect can include liens against the title, such as an unreleased mortgage. Maybe a prior owner had a mortgage on the property, and when they sold it to the next owner of the property, That mortgage got paid off, but for some reason it didn't get officially released in the county records as the mortgage of record. That would be an example of a title defect. Another example would be an error in the public records. So maybe maybe you signed the closing documents on a home you just purchased with the wrong middle initial. That really shouldn't happen, but unfortunately it does, and that would be considered a title defect. And then another example would be a boundary dispute. Maybe there is a neighbor that has tried to build a fence in your backyard, and you have a survey completed showing that where their fence is sitting is officially your land. So that would be another example of a title defect.